Am I wrong for lying to my friend's son about what he was eating? I just had one of the weirdest arguments I've ever had with a friend, and I want to know if I did anything wrong. Several of my friends have young children. One friend, in particular, I'll call her Sarah for this post, wants to create a child-centered household. Her son, who is 3.5, is a really picky eater. She won't make him eat anything he doesn't like, so he eats the same things a lot. I only have one other friend with a really specific diet for her child, but in their case it is completely justified. Her child has a really serious allergy. She is super thoughtful about always packing him food though, instead of having other people try to navigate his food rules. My other friends try to feed their children healthy food for the most part, but if you are willing to babysit, they are way less picky about what you feed them. Sarah is having another baby. She was scheduled to be induced yesterday. The whole thing was a little crazy. The induction date got moved up suddenly. Then, her parents, who were supposed to watch her son, had issues with their flight. Then, they decided to drive. Long story short, the day before yesterday, she calls me pretty upset around 11:30 p.m. and begs me to watch her son. Apparently, she had been desperately calling people and couldn't find a babysitter, and she had to go into the hospital early yesterday morning. My job is really flexible, so I agreed to call out sick. No big deal, and Sarah was starting to sound a little freaked out. She said that her parents could pick him up around 3 or 4. Anyway, yesterday morning was a mess on their way to the hospital. They were running late. Last night they had hastily packed a bag for their son, which they hadn't thought that they'd need to do. They took him though the drive-through at Chick-fil-A and then got caught in traffic. While they were driving to my apartment, she got the call from her mother that they had changed their minds and were driving in. When she called me from the car, she was irate. I agree that driving probably was a mistake and lost them more time than waiting on a flight, but she's mad at them, mad at her husband, and embarrassed that things are going so badly. She's a huge perfectionist. I said that I'd keep him longer. She told me that she should have had a home birth. About 20 minutes later, she drops him off. They forgot the car seat and stroller and his bag of snacks. I figure it's not worth bothering them, so I shrug it off. Both the kid and I are still in our pajamas, so I put in an old Disney movie and we lay around in the living room all morning. Around 11:30, he's hungry. I don't have kids and wasn't expecting to be watching this one, so my kitchen is pretty limited in terms of kid food. I can't drive him anywhere because there's no car seat. I live downtown, so I don't really want to walk anywhere with him without the stroller. I know he likes Chick-fil-A, so I thought about door dashing, but I don't know what she orders for him, and I didn't want to read an entire kid's menu to a toddler. I do have a few things that are similar to things he eats at home. I have these organic Bernie OS, from this brand Annie's that I love, that are similar to spaghetti OS, which I know he gets as a treat a lot. I cook them, but as I'm putting them in the bowl, I remember how picky he is and how he hates new food. I think about it for a second and tell him they are spaghetti OS. He doesn't realize. He eats the whole bowl. We watch movies some more. Around noon my friend calls to check in. I'm sort of confused. Isn't she in labor? She said that she isn't in labor. They just started the medicine a little while ago. Okay, I guess. She asks how her son is. I say fine. We watched movies and ate lunch. She asks if he ate his lunch thing she packed. I have walked over to the kitchen where he can't hear me and said no. She was like, why? I packed everything. I laughed and told her about the missing stroller, car seat, and food bag. She starts yelling at her husband. Basically, she said that she couldn't count on him to basic things. He wasn't helpful to her. He left all their shit in the car, and that now her car was going to smell like baloney. Then, she told him to take a walk because his face made her sick. Anyway, she starts crying, and I try to console her. I said that I found something he would eat. I even said that Bernie OS were organic, so maybe she could switch to something healthier. She's been trying to do this for him. She asked how I got him to try them. I laughed and said I told him they were spaghetti OS and he didn't know the difference. She starts crying more and says that I broke his trust by lying to him about food. I was like, Sarah, he's 3. I doubt that he'll even remember what he ate tomorrow. She snaps that she'll call me later and hangs up on me. I could tell she was pissed at me. Important info, I did not lie to her about what he ate, and I would never feed him something his mom wasn't okay with knowingly. In this case, she was actually happy he ate it until she found out that I lied to him about what it was. The kid had a great time with me yesterday. We made a blanket fort, watched movies, and I made him homemade Play-Doh. His grandparents picked him up around 10 o'clock that night. I haven't talked to Sarah since that phone call. Her husband texted me later that night to arrange for the grandparents to get their son. Sarah hasn't sent anything. I have already been told that I will be invited to meet the new baby, so I just want to know if this is something that I am wrong about and should apologize for or not. I posted this morning about my friend, Sarah, who got upset with me for telling her toddler that Bernie OS were spaghetti OS to get him to eat them. He is a super picky eater. I was watching him while she gave birth to her second child. I never thought that the post would get the attention that it did. Anyway, I wanted to answer a few recurring questions and share some additional information that I got over the last few hours. Why was Sarah's induction so unexpected? Why was everything last minute? Sarah has had a lot of complications with this pregnancy. The plan was always for her to be induced. She had all her plans set around that original date. She had booked her parents' flight about a month ago. When she went to the doctor a few days ago, the doctor saw some things that really concerned him, so he moved the induction date up for the health and safety of mother and baby. Why didn't Sarah or her parents book their flight? How did she not notice that the baby stuff didn't get brought up to my apartment? Sarah and her husband travel a lot and they have a lot of points saved. The flight was basically free if they booked it as opposed to her parents. Sarah booked the original flight, but she asked her husband to book the new one because she was overwhelmed that her induction had been moved up with only around 24 hours notice. Her husband has never booked his own flight. First his mother, then Sarah booked any personal trips. His secretary books his work trips. He just tells them what he wants. She asked him to make an exception because she was trying to pack their toddler's bag and explain to him what was happening. He didn't understand it, but he could tell something had happened and was scared. Her husband apparently forgot to confirm the flights and they never got booked even though he said that they did. That and transporting her and their son were the only things that she asked him to do. She even packed her husband's hospital bag. She didn't notice that the baby stuff didn't go up to my apartment because she didn't come up. They were running late already and it was quicker for her husband to bring everything up instead of her coming too. She was exhausted and crying because her son had been upset the night before and didn't notice that her husband had forgotten stuff. Does Sarah normally act this way? No. Sarah is normally amazing. She feeds her son really well normally. Organic veggies, cage-free eggs, etc. He is super picky, but she goes above and beyond to give him good food. Spaghetti OS are a special treat for him. Her sister's fiancé gave him some once, and he is obsessed with them. He only gets them at home occasionally as a treat, like any unhealthy food. She would never feed him unhealthy food all the time. I've also seen Sarah tell her son a white lie before. For example, when his father is on a business trip, she tells him every night that daddy asked about him and loves/misses him. That's why I was surprised that her stance on white lies had changed. I sort of suspected it might be hormonal. Sarah's husband isn't super involved with day-to-day household and parenting tasks. For example, they have a cleaning service and a nanny, but Sarah coordinates everything, which is a lot more to deal with than it sounds. Her husband has never fed the baby or changed a diaper. He's only babysat by himself a few times. It's stressful for him because their toddler is spirited and wants a lot of attention. He never babysat when he was a newborn. Sarah works full-time but obviously will be on maternity leave for the next 8 months. She has a really good job, but she prioritized work-life balance. Her husband's career is really demanding. She is normally great to him. She packs his bags for trips, runs his errands, manages the household, their child, and their social life. She sends gifts to the people in his life at the appropriate times. That sort of thing. She tries to make their home a sanctuary for him because of all the work stress. That hasn't been possible on the same level during a high-risk pregnancy, though, which is why they are fighting. Her sister and I tried to help. Her sister has taken over managing the cleaning service and the nanny. I have taken over their meal delivery and grocery shopping. We, and 2 or 3 other friends, have tried to split their errands and taking her to major doctor's appointment. Routine ones. She takes a car service. She isn't supposed to drive for longer periods of time. We and Sarah have all done our best, but the household hasn't been the same during her pregnancy. Sarah is normally a great friend. I wouldn't be so involved if she wasn't. Oh. I've known her since undergrad. She and I share a really dry sense of humor, which is why I tried to laugh the situation off. She is also the best mother. She gives her son consistency, and I have never seen a little boy so treasured and doted on. She is completely devoted to making him happy. He is the most important person in her life. How did the birth go? What happened next? The baby is here, but early. It was an emergency C-section. There was a lot of bleeding, but it's under control. The baby is in the NICU, but he should be out soon, hopefully. The doctor was hopeful that a natural delivery would be possible, but her blood pressure went sky high. They only very recently declared her blood pressure to be safe. I didn't know any of this until her sister called me about an hour or two ago, really upset. We had all, including Sarah and her doctor, really thought that the induction would allow her to have a safe, if higher risk, natural delivery. No one anticipated this. I mentioned in a comment that her husband called her a fucking bitch and left the hospital. Her sister gave more info on that too. After she told him to take a walk and called him names, he came back like an hour later. He said that since she was acting like a fking BTCH and didn't want him there, a work issue had come up and he was going to deal with it. Her sister stayed with her for the rest of the birth. He is in DC now. He is calling and texting occasionally for updates, and he had his secretary send flowers. But he did deserve being yelled at to a certain extent. I know a couple of people had mentioned that she was cruel to him, but there were circumstances that mitigate that. I had no idea that things had gone this badly until her sister called. We had all anticipated some issues, but nothing like this. Her sister said that she is mortified that she snapped at me and said I broke her son's trust. She was already upset, and when she found out that another thing, no matter how small, had gone wrong, she got mad and took it out of both me and her husband. Once the baby was born and she was settled back in her room, her sister said that she was crying and embarrassed that she had flipped out on me, her sister, and her parents. Her sister said she was crying and that Sarah told her that she had been completely unhinged. We all forgave her and said to pretend it never happened. I talked to her briefly, and I am invited to visit tomorrow. She was just too embarrassed to talk to anyone other than her sister for a while. She said that it was like an out-of-body experience, and she lost it for a minute. She is so mortified about some of things she said that didn't make sense. That's the most important stuff. I'm sorry if it feels like I left some important stuff out in my first post. Everything happened super fast, and I shared things only as I learned them. I only learned some of this major stuff in the last hour or so. I thought this was too much to add to the original post. I thought that her behavior was out of character and hormonal, and I wanted to know if I needed to apologize. My drier sense of humor can create awkward situations sometimes, or if it would be less embarrassing for her if I acted like it never happened. If there are any questions, I will try to answer them in the comments. Thank you to everyone who weighed in.